My name is Ivy Redmond, and for most of my life, I thought being the dependable one was enough. I didn't make waves. I didn't ask for more. I just kept showing up, quietly, consistently, believing that someday someone would notice. But sometimes the hardest part isn't being overlooked. It's realizing you've overlooked yourself. Please listen to the whole story, then let me know. Did I do the right thing by walking away? Would you have done the same? I'd really love your thoughts. The day of the party, the sky was spotless. One of those quiet, late spring mornings in Asheville when the light hits everything just right. If someone had told me then that something would shift forever, I would have laughed it off. But it did. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It just settled inside me like a stone. I'm 42, single, no kids. I work as a finance manager at a local firm, Weller and Green Accounting. My life is neat, quiet. I live alone in a modest apartment on the top floor of Hillcrest, a building that smells faintly of lavender and old wood. People say I'm dependable, the type you call when you need something done right, without fuss. I'm also the oldest daughter in a family that doesn't believe in talking about feelings, or fairness, or the fact that sometimes being the strong one means you're the first to be forgotten. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one holding the seams together, paying for things, remembering birthdays, sending monthly checks back home, like some kind of emotional direct deposit. Nobody asked me to. They didn't have to. That's the thing about expectations in families like mine. They're never spoken, just enforced. The idea for the party came to me last fall. 40 years of marriage. That's something, right? Something worth honoring. I thought if I could plan it just right, if I could make everything beautiful and thoughtful and memorable, maybe it would be enough. Enough to remind them that I'm here, that I've always been here. So I booked the Magnolia Ridge Inn, a charming old place tucked in the hills just outside town. I picked the menu myself, designed the invitations. I even found a local florist who knew how to work with dried wildflowers, Mom's favorite. Every detail had a reason. Every choice had me in it. The hardest part was the slideshow. I stayed up 3 nights going through old photo boxes, scanning bent corners and faded smiles. It felt strange looking back, like revisiting a story I was part of, but never really starred in. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. What mattered was the gesture. The day before the party, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off a few decorations. I walked in on Lena, my younger sister, and Mom sitting at the kitchen table, hunched over a laptop. They were laughing at something, their heads almost touching. It was the kind of closeness that used to make me jealous when I was a kid. "Oh, hey," Lena said, barely looking up. "We're just putting the finishing touches on the video. You probably don't want to watch it anyway, it's mostly pictures of me." She laughed like it was a joke. Mom smiled but didn't say anything. I chuckled too, because that's what I do. Keep the mood light. Don't rock the boat. Still, a tightness wrapped around my chest. I told myself it was just work stress, or not enough sleep. Definitely not hurt. I don't get hurt over small things like this anymore. The day of the party arrived like any other. Warm air, soft music, white linens on round tables. People I hadn't seen in years came up to hug me, to say things like, "You're just like your father," or "You've always been the reliable one." I smiled, accepted their compliments like a polite handshake. Lena floated around the room like the star of the show, her dress perfect, her laugh bright and effortless. My parents beamed every time someone mentioned how beautiful she was. I sat at a table near the edge of the room, watching it all. My wine glass reflected the soft yellow glow from the string lights overhead. I felt like a guest at an event I had orchestrated, but wasn't truly part of. Still, I told myself, I didn't do it for attention. I did it for them. I did it because someone had to. Then they dimmed the lights. The projector whirred to life, and the screen filled with white, then black, then the words, "A Journey of Love, 40 years and the children who made it worthwhile." The first photo was Lena, age 3, on Dad's shoulders. The next was Lena again, blowing out birthday candles. Then Lena graduating high school, Lena at Mom's 60th. Lena hugging Dad in front of the Christmas tree. Every now and then, I appeared. Once blurry in the background, once turned halfway out of frame. 2 shots total, I think. Neither of them centered, neither of them clear. People clapped. Mom wiped a tear. Lena leaned into her, whispering something sweet. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just stared at my glass, the light catching on the rim like a spotlight, and thought, maybe this is the moment I stop pretending. Maybe this is when I finally admit to myself that I've never really belonged in this story. And maybe that's the part that hurts the most. I got home late that night. The hallway lights flickered once as I stepped off the elevator, and I didn't bother turning on the lights inside. I slipped off my shoes, tossed my purse on the armchair, and just stood there. My apartment, normally quiet in a peaceful sort of way, suddenly felt hollow, like something had been sucked out of it, and out of me. I sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at nothing for a while. There was no dramatic sobbing, no throwing things against the wall, just this dull, pressing weight in my chest. Not grief, not anger, just emptiness. For years, I've told myself I didn't need recognition, that being the backbone, the responsible one, was enough. You do it because it's right, not because anyone says thank you. And I believed that. Until last night. Until I watched 3 minutes of memories where I was barely a shadow on the screen. That morning, I called my parents to thank them for the party. Old habit. Be gracious, be the adult. Mom picked up. She sounded cheerful. Wasn't that a lovely evening? Everyone had such a good time. I think so, I said. Everything turned out just the way I hoped. You know, she added, Lena really outdid herself with that video. So sweet, right? Everyone was talking about it. I waited. Nothing. No mention of the venue I paid for, the flowers I picked out, the gifts I wrapped. I had spent weeks making sure every detail was perfect, and none of it even existed in her memory. I guess I didn't realize how few pictures of me were in the slideshow, I said gently. It just caught me off guard. Mom laughed softly, the way someone does when they think you're overthinking. Oh, honey, you were always the one behind the camera. You know you don't like being in photos. Don't be silly. It wasn't cruel. That's what made it worse. It was casual, effortless, like I'd never been expected to take up space in the first place. After the call, I left the apartment to clear my head. I walked a few blocks to Hazel and Fern, a little coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and a vintage furniture store, the kind of place that always smells like cinnamon and old wood. I don't usually go out on Sundays, but something in me needed to be somewhere warm, somewhere not scripted. That's where I met May. She was behind the counter, wiping down mugs, her silver hair tied in a low, no-nonsense bun. Slim, a little hunched, but with a presence that made you straighten your back. Her eyes landed on me the second I stepped in. You okay? She asked. Not nosy, just observant. Her voice had a steadiness to it, a weight. You look like you've been somewhere exhausting. I smiled, caught off guard. That obvious? She poured me coffee without another word, slid it across the counter. Thanks, I said, sitting down at the bar. I just came back from a party. Ah, she nodded. A bad one? I laughed, but it came out flat. Not bad, just revealing. She didn't push, just waited. I looked down at my cup. Steam curled from the surface like something trying to escape. I organized this anniversary party for my parents, I said slowly. Booked the place, picked everything, even helped collect old photos. There was a slideshow, 3 minutes long. May leaned against the counter, arms folded. And I was in 2 of the pictures, both blurry. She didn't gasp. She didn't say, I'm so sorry. She just nodded, like she'd heard this before. That must have hurt, she said simply. I blinked. Yeah, I whispered. More than I expected. There was a pause, the kind that doesn't feel awkward, just full. You sound like someone who's been writing the story for years, May said, but never got her name on the cover. I stared at her. Something in my chest shifted. Maybe, I said. Maybe I'm just tired of writing. She gave me a knowing look. Then maybe it's time someone else picked up the pen. Or better yet, maybe it's time you wrote something for yourself. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sipped my coffee and let the silence do the rest. About a week after the party, just as I was beginning to tuck the whole thing away in that mental drawer labeled Disappointments I've Survived, Lena texted me. It was casual, like always, friendly on the surface, but edged with expectation. Hey, just checking. Can you keep sending the monthly transfer for Mom and Dad? They're kinda counting on it. If you stop now, I'm not sure how they'll manage. I stared at the screen. Read it twice. Not, how are you? Not, thanks again for the party. Just, the assumption that I'd keep playing the same role, no matter how invisible I'd become in the process. It hit me harder than I wanted it to. I typed slowly, fingers hovering between irritation and restraint. Lena, I covered the entire anniversary party out of pocket. It's been a financially tight couple of months. I think we should revisit the whole monthly support arrangement. I hesitated before hitting send. I knew it would land like a slap. Not because it was mean, but because it was the first time I'd said no. Or even hinted at maybe. The reply didn't come from Lena. It came from Mom. It buzzed through just 3 minutes later, like she'd been waiting for it. Why would you say that to your sister? She's only trying to help. You two should be supporting each other, not keeping score. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stood in the middle of my kitchen, staring at the phone in my hand, feeling the blood rise hot and silent behind my eyes. It wasn't about the money. It never really was. It was about how quickly I turned from the dependable one to the problem, the moment I tried to draw a line, the moment I stopped being useful. I thought back, too easily, through a decade's worth of moments I had quietly carried. Paying Lena's college tuition when she changed majors a third time, canceling a vacation to Arizona so I could fly home and take care of Mom when she had pneumonia, sending gift cards at Christmas when I couldn't make it back, only to hear later that Lena really saved the holiday by bringing homemade pies. Every single time, she got the credit. I got the quiet. I used to tell myself it didn't matter, that being needed was enough. But lately, that need felt more like ownership. That afternoon, I walked over to Hazel and Fern. The air smelled like burnt leaves and nutmeg, the kind of scent that clings to memory. May was restocking the pastry case when I came in. She glanced up, then stopped. You look like someone who just lost a long argument with herself, she said. I smiled faintly. Close. She poured me a cup of the dark roast I'd come to love. No cream, just heat. I said no to my sister, I told her. Well, half a no. May slid the coffee across the counter and leaned in slightly. Half a no is still a no to people who aren't used to hearing it. I nodded. Now my mother's mad. Apparently, I've forgotten what family means. May didn't blink. Or maybe you've finally remembered what it should mean. I let that sink in. The hum of the espresso machine behind her filled the quiet like a steady heartbeat. Here's the thing, I said, stirring my coffee out of habit. If I'm the one who keeps things running, pays the bills, organizes the events, takes the emotional hits, then why do they treat me like I'm not really there? May's eyes softened, but she didn't look away. Because people often only value what they can lean on, not what they see. I sat back, breath caught in my throat. She didn't say it with pity. She said it like someone who had learned that truth the hard way. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I felt more angry or ashamed. Angry at them, for never seeing me. Ashamed of myself, for needing them to. I finished my coffee in silence. May didn't push. She just stood nearby, wiping down the counter like she'd been through this kind of ache before. You're allowed to want more than being reliable, she said before I left. You're allowed to take up space. Take up space. The words clung to me all the way home. The email came on a Wednesday morning, sandwiched between an insurance reminder and a sale ad for winter coats. I almost missed it. It was from Carla Maynard, an old friend of Lena's from high school, one of the many people I hadn't spoken to in years, but had somehow ended up on the guest list. "Lovely party," she wrote. "It was so sweet of Lena to do the video herself. She said she spent nights editing it as a surprise for your folks. So thoughtful." I read that line 3 times. Then again, slower. Lena did the video. Not just helped. Not just offered ideas. She made it. She chose the photos. She decided which faces would tell the story of our family. And she cut me out. On purpose. I closed the laptop slowly, as if handling something fragile. Then I sat back in my chair and stared out the window. It was raining lightly, the kind that doesn't soak the ground, but blurs the edges of everything you see. For a second, I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Disbelief? Rage? Maybe just confirmation of something I'd suspected for years and never wanted to admit. I kept trying to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they forgot. Maybe it was an oversight. Maybe I wasn't photogenic enough to be remembered. But this was a choice. And somehow, knowing it was intentional, didn't make me want to fight. It made me tired. Bone tired. Later that evening, I sat on my couch, phone in hand, debating whether to call Mom. We hadn't spoken since her text defending Lena, but I needed to ask. I needed to hear it from her. When she picked up, her voice was cheery, like always. "Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, though it wasn't. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." I hesitated. "Do you ever think I need to be seen too?" There was a pause, just long enough to register. "Oh, honey," she said. "You're always okay. I've never had to worry about you. That's something I've always admired." Admired. That word sat on my tongue like vinegar. She didn't mean to hurt me. That was the thing. She really believed that by not worrying about me, she was honoring me. That by leaving me off the list of concerns, she was giving me credit. But what I heard was this: "You're fine. You don't need love. You're strong enough to be invisible." I didn't push the conversation further. I thanked her. Told her I had to get back to work. Hung up. Then I sat still in the silence, letting the truth crawl all over me. They don't see me. Not because I've failed to show up, but because they've decided who I am, and there's no room for correction. In their story, I'm the helper, the provider, the one who always makes sure the lights stay on, but never asks to be warmed by them. The next day, I went back to Hazel and Fern. I didn't even pretend it was just for coffee. May took one look at me and poured a double. No questions. "I found out Lena made the video," I said. "She picked the photos. She left me out." May didn't flinch. "And your mom?" "Thinks I'm fine. Always have been. Always will be." May nodded slowly, wiping down the counter like it helped organize her thoughts. "Sometimes people get so used to leaning on someone, they forget that person has a spine." I let out a half laugh, more breath than sound. "I'm thinking of stopping the monthly payments," I said quietly. She looked up. "You should." I blinked. "You don't even know the full story." "I don't have to," she said. "If your kindness is something they expect instead of appreciate, it's no longer kindness. It's a transaction. And the moment you feel guilty for stopping it, that's when you know they were never seeing you, just what you gave." I sat with that for a long time, stirring my coffee, watching the cream swirl like a storm in a cup. "Do you think that makes me selfish?" I asked. May tilted her head. I think it makes you honest. And maybe a little brave." I didn't answer right away, but something in me had already shifted. The call came around 8 p.m., right when the house was finally quiet, and the hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in my kitchen. I didn't recognize the number at first. Dad never calls from his cell. He hates it. Says it makes him feel like he's shouting into space. "Hey, kiddo," he said softly when I picked up. "You got a minute?" I already knew. His tone was calm, maybe even kind, but I could feel the weight pressing in behind every word. "I just wanted to say, your mom's been really upset lately about the tension between you and Lena. She's been saying she doesn't recognize you anymore. He let that hang there, like it was my cue to apologize. There was a pause. If you stop sending money, he continued, she's going to take it as a sign, like you've changed, that you're pulling away from the family. There it was. The transaction wrapped in sentiment, the loyalty measured in deposits. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I understand, I said. Then I hung up. No fight, no crying on the line, just click. I stood there in my dimly lit kitchen, phone still in my hand, staring at the sink like it might explain something. My chest felt tight, not in a panicked way, but in that quiet, crushed kind of way, like something inside me had finally caved in from holding too much. Then, slowly, I slid down to the floor. And I cried. Not a storm, not dramatic. Just slow, steady tears. For everything I hadn't let myself feel. For every time I'd told myself, it's fine, when it wasn't. For every holiday I paid for. Every favor I did without asking for thanks. Every moment I made smaller, so someone else could feel bigger. That was the first time in years I let myself fall apart, and didn't rush to clean it up. The next morning, I walked to Hazel and Fern with my coat unbuttoned and hair still a little damp. May noticed the difference right away. She didn't ask, just poured the coffee and waited. I think I'm done, I said finally, with the whole performing daughter thing. She nodded, like she'd known it before I said it. You ever feel like people only see what you let them? All the time, May said. That's the curse of being capable. She leaned back, her eyes narrowing slightly, like she was deciding how much to share. I was married for 25 years, she said, to a man who never hit me, never cheated, never raised his voice. But every day, he reminded me in 100 small ways that I wasn't enough unless I was bending to him. I blinked. That wasn't what I expected to hear. I stayed because I was proud, she continued, because I thought walking away would mean I failed. Then, one morning, I woke up, looked in the mirror, and realized I didn't recognize the woman brushing her teeth. So I left. Quietly. Took nothing but my books and my blender. I laughed, couldn't help it. May smiled, then grew serious again. People don't see you hurting when you're good at hiding it, but the longer you hide it, the more they forget you're human. I looked down at my cup. The swirl of cream had settled, leaving just a solid dark surface, like calm after a storm. I think I've been afraid, I admitted. Not of being unloved, but of being unloved once I stopped giving. May's voice was soft. So give to yourself, Ivy. Just this once. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt. When I got home, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. My hands didn't shake. They didn't hesitate. I canceled the recurring transfers. Every single one. Then I opened my email and wrote a short note. Subject: about the money. Body: from now on, I will no longer be responsible for the family's financial needs. If anyone needs something, they'll have to work for it, like I always have. Ivy: I didn't explain. I didn't soften the tone. I just pressed send and sat back in my chair. For the first time in a long, long while, I felt like I wasn't running on autopilot. I felt real. The call came less than 24 hours after I sent the email. This time, it was Mom. Her voice was sharp from the very first word. No pleasantries, no, "How are you?" "I can't believe you do this now," she said, each word clipped like it had been rehearsed. "After everything we've been through, after all we've given you, you think this is the time to turn your back?" I stood by the window, phone pressed to my ear, heart strangely calm. "Mom, I didn't turn my back," I said, keeping my voice even. "I just stopped paying for the privilege of being ignored." There was silence, just a beat. Then came the sting. "You're the most ungrateful daughter I've ever had," she said. "All these years, I've never asked for anything, never asked for help. And now, when I finally need something, you act like a stranger." I took a breath. The kind you take when you're about to say the thing you never thought you'd say. You've needed me plenty, Mom, I said, but you've never admitted it, never thanked me, never even saw me, and now that I'm doing something for myself, you're acting like I've betrayed you. More silence. Heavier this time. I could almost hear her blinking. Is that really how you see it? She asked, voice quieter. I didn't answer right away, because yes, that's exactly how I saw it. And saying it out loud would mean closing a door I'd left cracked open for decades. I see it clearly now, I said. She hung up without another word. I stood there for a long time, phone still warm in my hand. Not crying, not angry, just hollow. But inside that hollowness was a kind of stillness I hadn't felt before. Not peace, not yet, but the space where peace might eventually grow. The next few days were quiet. No more calls, no texts, just absence. At first, it felt like loss. And in some ways, it was. But not the loss of people. I'd never really had them to begin with. It was the loss of illusion, of the idea that if I gave enough, they'd finally give back. I spent a weekend cleaning my apartment. Not just tidying, but really clearing. I boxed up the guest blankets I kept in the closet in case Mom and Dad ever visited. Donated the extra plates. Threw out the herbal tea no one but Lena drank. I looked around and realized how much of my space had been built around the idea that someone else might need it. Now I was building something else. Just for me. May noticed the shift the next time I walked into Hazel and Fern. She didn't say anything, just raised an eyebrow and gave me the strong coffee without asking. But I didn't stay long that day, because Lena showed up. I was sitting by the window when she walked in, sunglasses still on, as if that might shield her from the weight of the moment. She spotted me instantly, walked straight over. "Got a minute?" she asked. I nodded. We didn't hug, didn't sit too close. She started with a sigh, the kind that's meant to soften you before the blow. "I don't get it," she said. "You've always had everything, the job, the apartment, the stability. Why is it so hard for you to just keep helping?" I looked at her, really looked. She still had that same hopeful tilt in her voice, like she was waiting for me to fold. "I never had everything, Lena," I said quietly. "I just didn't ask for more." She blinked, frowned. "You always act like you're above it all," she said. "Like you're better than me because you keep things together." "No," I said. "I'm just tired. And I'm done trying to prove I'm enough by draining myself for people who only notice when I stop." Her mouth tightened. For a moment, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Maybe hurt. Maybe understanding. Maybe just the realization that the rules were changing, and she didn't have a map anymore. She nodded once. No anger, no apology, just acknowledgement. Then she left. I sat there alone, hands wrapped around my coffee, feeling the strange relief of nothing left to fix. The break had finally come. And somehow, it didn't destroy me. It set me free. It's been almost 3 months since I stepped away from the version of myself they needed me to be. No more automatic transfers. No more weekly phone calls that felt more like checking a box than connection. No more shrinking myself to keep the peace in a room where no one noticed the corners I folded in. At first, the silence felt wrong. Not painful, but strange. Like I was walking through a familiar house after all the furniture had been taken out. The echoes were loud. The quiet pressed against me like fog. There were mornings I'd reach for my phone out of habit, thumb hovering over my mother's name, and then stop. What would I even say? But silence, like anything else, can become a rhythm. And over time, it did. Now I get up early, not to prepare reports, not to organize someone else's birthday, not to juggle crises that aren't mine, but to sit by the window with a blanket across my lap, coffee in hand, and a book with a worn spine. Not a self-help book, not a parenting guide, just fiction, just story. Other people's lives and losses and second chances. Some mornings I write. Not for anyone else, just for me. bits of memory, scribbled fragments, things I never gave myself permission to say out loud. Things like, I wanted someone to choose me without me having to earn it. One morning last week, I tried a new pancake recipe with buttermilk and orange zest. I burnt the first batch so badly the smoke alarm chirped. And I laughed, really laughed. Not because it was funny, but because there was no one there to impress. No one to scold or fix or prove anything to. Just me, in a kitchen filled with burnt sugar and sunshine, knowing the world wouldn't end because breakfast didn't turn out. The silence now feels less like absence and more like air. Breathable, kind, still. Last weekend, I sat down and wrote a letter to my parents. Not to mend things, not to beg for anything, just to place the last piece where it belonged. I included a small photo from the anniversary party, one of the few where I was visible, halfway turned, almost out of frame. I chose it on purpose. On the back of the photo, I wrote, "That day was the last gift I gave as the daughter you raised me to be. I did it not because I was told to, but because I thought it mattered. Going forward, I'll be doing what matters to me." There was no venom, no hidden plea. I didn't expect a response. I didn't get one. And that's okay. I don't need to be explained anymore, or defended, or excused. I've spent too many years hoping to be seen by people who only turned their heads when I was carrying something they needed. Now I carry myself. There are still moments, little flashes of what once was. Certain smells, like rosemary on roasted chicken or Dad's aftershave. The sound of a screen door slamming in summer. That ache creeps up sometimes. Not as pain, just memory. But it's gentler now, like a scar that itches when the weather shifts. You know it's there, but it doesn't open anymore. I don't brace myself for texts. I don't flinch when the phone rings. I don't explain why I need space, or why I chose peace over performance. I see Lena sometimes, from a distance. I passed her once near the farmer's market. She was carrying sunflowers, talking to someone, laughing like her world had never cracked. She looked light, or maybe just untouched. She didn't see me, or maybe she did and chose not to react. Either way, I didn't wave. That moment used to hurt in theory, but standing there in my own shoes, holding my own bag of fresh bread and tea, I realized something. That absence is also an answer. And it's enough. May's still there, in the quietest ways. She doesn't pry, she just knows. Some mornings, she pours my coffee and says nothing. Other times, she'll slide a note across the counter. Small slips of truth in her slanted, steady handwriting. One read, "You don't have to win to walk away. Some battles aren't worth the price of your peace." I folded that one up and tucked it in my wallet. It's still there. Healing, I've learned, doesn't look like what people say it does. It's not a triumphant moment with swelling music. It's not even a clean break. It's quiet. It's realizing you haven't thought about them in 2 days, then 4, then a week. It's recognizing yourself in the mirror again and not feeling tired of your own eyes. It's walking into your apartment on a Saturday afternoon and knowing this life, this one, where no one calls to demand, to guilt, to drain, is enough. It's sitting in your favorite chair, wrapped in an old blanket, looking out the window while the light changes, and realizing, with certainty, you don't owe anyone your exhaustion. And you never did. The morning began like most of them do now. Quiet, slow, intentional. The kettle hummed its familiar tune. A soft jazz tune floated in from the speakers down at Hazel and Fern. The neighbor's cat, a gray tabby I haven't named but secretly call Edgar, curled up on my windowsill like he owned the place. I sat with my coffee, steam rising steady in the early light, and opened my journal. A worn, leather-bound thing that's become my soft place to land. I wrote, without thinking too much. This is the life I used to think I wasn't allowed to want. But maybe all I had to do was stop asking for permission. 3 months have passed since I chose to step away. Not a dramatic exit, just a quiet refusal to keep proving my worth. Since then, I haven't heard from my mother. Lena, either. No long voicemails, no guilt-laced texts, not even a birthday card, though they never missed one before. According to a cousin I ran into at the grocery store, they've been fine. Still hosting Sunday dinners. Still smiling for holiday photos. My name, apparently, hasn't come up. That used to be my biggest fear, disappearing from their version of the story. But the strange truth is, I don't miss being mentioned. I don't miss the weight of always being the one holding the rope while everyone else swung freely. I miss the idea of family sometimes, but not the family I actually had, just the one I used to wish we were. And even that longing is starting to fade. May and I meet most mornings now. She brews the coffee stronger when I look tired and slides an extra biscotti across the counter when she senses I've had a rough week. We don't talk much about the past anymore. We don't need to. Sometimes she just looks at me and says something like, "You're breathing better lately." And I know what she means. Because I am. I say no more easily. I rest without guilt. I go whole weekends without checking my email. And I've started dreaming again. Nothing grand, just small things. Repainting my kitchen. Taking a solo trip to Maine. Maybe even starting a book club. The other day, May asked if I'd help her set up a little reading corner in the cafe. A shelf for secondhand books. A couple of worn armchairs. Nothing fancy, she said. Just a quiet place for people who want to be alone, but not lonely. It felt like an invitation. Not just to help, but to belong. And I said yes, without hesitation. A few afternoons ago, I ran into a former coworker, Sandra, from my accounting days. We hadn't seen each other in years. She did a double take, then said, "Wow, Ivy, you look lighter." I just smiled. Didn't explain. Didn't offer a story to make her feel better about how I'd changed. Because I don't owe anyone an explanation anymore. Not about my peace. Not about my boundaries. Not about the version of me I've chosen to become. That night, back at home, I lit a candle, opened the window, and let the breeze roll through the living room. The silence wasn't heavy. It felt earned. No one was calling. No one was asking. And no one was making me feel like I had to apologize for that. I sat by the window, tea in hand, the sky melting into amber and lavender above the hills. Edgar blinked at me, stretched, and settled deeper into the sill. And I thought, maybe this is what freedom looks like. Not the absence of love, but the absence of permission. I used to believe that if I ever stepped away from my family, I'd become no one. That without their approval, I'd cease to exist. But now I know, only by leaving did I finally arrive. And the world didn't collapse. It just opened. They don't say my name anymore. And that's okay. Because they don't own it anymore either. Before we wrap up, I just want to say this. Not every story ends with closure, and maybe that's okay. Sometimes peace comes quietly, in the form of a decision no one else understands, but that finally feels right to you. Maybe you've been the one holding everything together. Maybe you've stayed silent longer than you should have. And maybe, like me, you've started to wonder, what would happen if I stopped asking for permission to choose myself? Have you ever been there? If this story spoke to something inside you, I hope you'll stay with me for the next ones. There are so many more stories to tell. And maybe one of them will sound a little like yours.